Yo, what is up, boys? It is your boy Zether here, back at it again to drop What If Deku Was Born with Mob's Powers? Yes, boys, you voted for it, and I am here to deliver. So before the video gets started, make sure you share this video with a friend, comment down your attendance down below, go get your snacks, and, just go ahead and drop your boy a like real quick, do your boy a favor. But, yeah, with that being said, though, I don't want to waste your guys' time, so we're just going to go ahead and, get started. Okay, so this story will actually all start off when Deku's born. This version of Deku is going to be looking exactly like Deku, and in this time, I'm not actually going to make Deku look like Mob, but he is going to look like just regular old Izuku. So, with that being said though, this version of Deku will be Mob's reincarnation, but he will not be getting any of Mob's memories anytime soon. Or actually at all in the series. He's never going to get any of those memories from his previous life. And let's just say Deku just goes through his life like a normal kid. We're just going to skip over to the day when Deku's about, 1 year old, okay? He just turned 1. He just learned how to walk. And it's actually on this particular day that Deku would actually just be walking around with his mom holding her hand. I don't even know if babies can walk at the age of 1, but I'm pretty sure they can. Come on now. Like, you're 1 year old, learn to walk already. Okay, but seriously though, Deku would basically just be with his mother Inko as, they're basically walking through the grocery store, the convenience store. As Inko's basically just grabbing her groceries, and this when some man with like a hooded figure would walk in out of nowhere and just begin to walk real close to Inko, as Inko just kind of ignores it. She thinks that, maybe he's just, he doesn't really have much and he just comes out like this. And Inko just doesn't really worry too much about it as she proceeds to, pick out her little lemons and oranges and all that stuff. She's in like the vegetables section, right? Or the, the fruit and vegetable section, right? As, the man basically walks over to Deku, and before Inko has any time to react, the man would immediately grab Deku and proceed to run out of the door. As Deku would immediately start crying. His cries would begin to shake the entirety of the store, and the man holding Deku would begin to say, What is this? As Deku's eyes would immediately glow white, and this is when the man would literally just be thrown like straight crashing into a wall, as Deku would just begin to float and his eyes would just be glowing white. As this is when Inko would proceed to basically run over to Izuku and hug him as he begins to cry like a normal baby. And this is when Deku would finally realize what everything is, or not even Deku, but Inko would finally realize the extent of Deku's powers. During the next couple of years, Inko would take Deku to the quirk examination place, and they would tell Inko that he is born quirkless. She would say, no, he's not. I swear, he has like a stronger version of my quirk. I saw it with my own eyes. And the doctors would just all tell her that she's pretty much crazy, with Inko just going home with her kid, that being Izuku, and just basically not having the answer she was searching for. Deku would basically go home with Inko, and for the next couple of years until Deku was about 4 years old, when he finally understands what's going on around him, Deku's telekinetic abilities and his just weird psychic powers just start getting stronger and stronger as the years progress. He would start breaking spoons and plates and just start having weird occurrences and anomalies going on in the house. As Inko, by the time that Deku was 4 years old, had pretty much just gotten used to it, and Deku would always apologize for the things that he would do. However, it's at this point that Inko would basically try to teach Deku how to use his powers, and Deku would basically look at his mother's quirk as an example. He would think that his powers are just telekinesis abilities, and he would go through his normal day-to-day life with just that. Now it's at this point that Bakugo would pretty much unlock his explosion quirk, and Deku would be extremely tempted to show the class that he has a quirk of his own. He has telekinetic powers, but for some reason his mother just doesn't want him to tell anybody what his powers are, and she just doesn't want Deku to basically show them off or use them for any selfish purposes. If he wants to become a hero someday in the future, she would love that and she would support him all the way, but to just flash her quirk for attention, Deku would be raised the right way, and Deku would never show off his quirk. When people would ask Deku if he has one, he would say he does, but he would never show it, so people would believe that Deku's just born quirkless, and they would all just basically make fun of him and pick on him. But Deku wouldn't really mind too much. He would always just think in the back of his head that his powers are not meant to hurt other people. His powers are not meant to hurt other people. He would always just think that in his mind. As Bakugo through the years would begin to get rougher and rougher with Deku, telling him to finally show his quirk off someday. Come on, Deku, show that power of yours. Do it. As Deku would just refuse. Deku in this version is not actually going to have Mob's personality of being like a really shy kid. Deku's still going to love heroes and have that normal personality, but he just refuses to use his powers due to the fact that nobody needs saving. You know, there's no real reason for Deku to do that. So, of course, Deku would proceed to basically just go through life like usual, and this is when we're actually going to have a time skip to the day of the sludge villain incident. The teacher would of course walk in through the door and he would begin to say, well, it's about time that you guys all started thinking about your futures. And he would then proceed to look at the class as he picks up his glasses, doing that usual anime thing, that Kabuto thing, if you guys know what I mean, as he'd proceed to say, just kidding. I know you all want to become heroes! As he would throw the papers in the air and all of the kids would start flashing their powers. Some of them would look towards Deku's direction to see if he was finally showing his off. And Deku would just be sitting there, putting his books in his bag. As class would pretty much end, and this is when Bakugo and his goons would walk up to Deku. As Bakugo would end up grabbing Deku's, his book, and he would end up essentially just throwing it out as he would explode it. Now, this would actually cause Deku's anger meter to go up to 50%, as Deku would essentially just tell Bakugo that that's not nice, and he would end up going off of the roof. Just basically going off to get it. As Bakugo would tell him the same thing that he had done in canon, that being, why don't you take a swan dive off the roof? With Deku basically just ignoring it and going to get his book, just thinking that powers aren't made to hurt others. Powers aren't made to hurt others. Just thinking that constantly, as the meter would go up to about 67% after what Bakugo had said with the swan dive stuff. As Deku would proceed to basically just be trying his absolute hardest to not, give Bakugo the attention that he wants. Deku would be trying his absolute hardest not to give Bakugo that satisfaction of letting himself be looked at as if, he failed and he lost. He just doesn't want to give off that vibe. So of course, Deku would proceed to basically just walk off home. As Deku would be walking off home, he would actually just basically go under an alleyway where he would actually sense an ominous presence. Now, as Deku would be walking home, he'd basically just be putting his book in his bag, and this is when the sludge villain would jump in out of nowhere from the sewers, as Deku would immediately turn around, and he would see that the sludge villain would jump on top of his body as Deku would start suffocating, and he would lose his ability to breathe, as Deku would begin to think whether this is a good situation to use his abilities. As the sludge villain would then say, give me your body, kid. You're my hero. As Deku would then say, this is the villain. Mom said I can use my powers to be a hero, so this must be right. As he would immediately wave his hand and the sludge villain would get off of Deku immediately. As Deku would levitate it, and he would then have a bottle coming out of nowhere. As Deku would shove the sludge villain inside of it, and this is when All Might would appear. As Deku at this point would be holding the sludge villain up, as All Might would basically come in and drop in as he would say hello. As he would say, wow, looks like you captured this villain all by your own. Deku would turn around slowly as he would say, All Might, it's you. Can I get an autograph? Please, I have all your books. I'm your biggest fan. As All Might would basically say, ha 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 ha. Sure, kid. As he would sign Deku's book, and All Might would grab the sludge villain as he jumps off. Now, this version of Deku's not going to grab onto All Might's leg due to the fact that he has a quirk. I think maybe, he might have thought about it, but, he wouldn't end up doing it just due to the fact that he actually has a quirk and he thinks he can become a hero. His mother told him that, and that's all the reassurance that he needs. I feel like if the Inko version in My Hero Academia, the normal one, would have had that confidence in Deku, maybe Deku might not have turned out the way he did. But yeah, Deku might have not turned out the way that he did. Anyways, that being said though, however, I feel like after this, All Might would still proceed to drop the sludge villain due to his own clumsiness. And just from looking at those cargo pants, yeah, that thing was gonna fall. Anyways, let's just say that All Might had a hole in them, right? And the sludge villain bottle just went out. And, Bakugo would of course be caught up just like the version of Bakugo was in the original. He would end up being caught by the sludge villain and the explosions would go off, to which Deku would be walking in that direction unknowingly. This version would still basically be having, his would basically be walking there subconsciously without even knowing it. But Deku would be smiling the whole time as he's looking at the book that's signed. He would just be so happy. His idol, he had just met his idol and gotten his signature. He's just extremely excited. Deku, as soon as he hears the explosions, would run towards that direction, and he'd ask what's going on, as people would say that the heroes can't save that kid. He's gonna die if nobody steps in. As Deku would look at Bakugo's eyes, and Bakugo would give him that stare that he had done in canon. As Deku would in an instant point his hand at the sludge villain and get it off of Bakugo. As Deku would basically snap his fingers and the sludge villain would go into nothingness. Deku would have teleported the sludge villain right into the police station, and after this Deku would run straight in through the crowd as nobody had actually seen what Deku had done. He would run up to Bakugo and ask him if he's okay. As Bakugo would basically look at Deku and say, "I'm fine, get off of me." As he wouldn't even know Deku was the one who saved him, so he would then say, "I took that care of that thing all by myself." As Deku would say, "Yeah, you did, Bakugo." And this is when All Might would arrive and the heroes would basically scold Deku for jumping into harm's way. Deku would basically proceed to smile after everything, and the only person who would have seen what Deku had done was All Might. After all was said and done and Deku was walking home, All Might would have followed this version of Deku, and he would have basically ended up explaining what One For All is to him. Of course, this version of Deku doesn't necessarily need One For All, but after All Might has studied Deku's body and just looked at his build, All Might would have decided that, yeah, this kid definitely needs a little bit of training. So we're going to have a little bit of Mob Psycho training montage for the next 10 months. Deku would spend these next 10 months training with All Might just due to the fact that this version of Deku was even more flimsier than the original one. And Deku would end up getting about pretty ripped by the end of everything. He was able to, this version of Deku has the same motivation, and seeing as he's training with All Might, he definitely would have been able to accomplish his goals. And since he doesn't have Mob's personality per se, he just has the lock with him using his abilities to harm others on it. That's pretty much the only thing that he ended up gaining from having Mob's powers. So yeah, Deku would train with All Might every day for 10 months, and he would end up getting pretty ripped after everything. Deku's, in terms of his abilities and powers, would have never actually had to essentially train them, and at this point, Deku's anger would be at about 76%. He still wouldn't have snapped. So yeah, let's just skip over to the day of the entrance exam. Deku would be walking in as he's basically just thinking the same things that our original Deku would, and this is when Deku would proceed to end up bumping into Araka, as she would catch him and use her zero gravity quirk on him, as she would catch him before he could fall and say, "Hey, sorry I used my quirk on you. It would just be bad luck if you were to fall before the entrance exam." As Deku would look at her and he would begin to blush, as yeah, this version of Deku still hasn't talked to girls either, and the same situation would go down. Now, in terms of going inside of the taking the written exam, Ida would still clown this man Deku, and Deku would still end up being a little ashamed after what Ida says to him. So Deku would proceed to basically finish up the test, getting a perfect score, since this version of Deku is even more intelligent than our original canon, seeing as he was a little frailer. So guess what he was doing while he wasn't, doing what our original Deku did? He was studying. So yeah, this version of Deku is even smarter, and not this version of studying, but usual study, like normal studying, right? But anyways, that aside, Deku would be even smarter, and he would walk outside as he was actually the first one to complete his test. Bakugo would have looked at Deku after that, and he would have just been thinking, "Nerd," as he would have finished his test, and Deku would be outside in the training grounds, just basically ready to take the exam. He'd be doing some squats and just some stretches, as Ida would walk up to him and say, "Hey, stop that, you're being very distracting to the other participants." As Deku would look towards Ida and he would say, "Huh? Oh, sorry about that, I didn't mean to distract people. I'm just getting in some stretches before the exam, just trying to get loose." As Ida would say, "You are a major distraction, problem child." As he would walk away from Deku, and his anger meter would go up to an 80%. As Deku would proceed to basically just think nothing of it, and President Mike would come on the speakers basically saying that they gotta go, 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 there's no countdowns in a real battle. As Deku would use his abilities to levitate off the ground, he would proceed to basically just look around at the robots, as he would basically just walk around. Actually, no, retcon that. As soon as President Mike says go, Deku would like look around and everybody as they're all gone, and Deku would begin to basically just run off looking for robots without using his quirk whatsoever. He would be running around, kind of like stumbling around, just looking for any robots that he could find. But anytime that he would seek or come across one, they would all just get destroyed by everyone else. So his anger meter would go up by 2%. This meaning he's at 82 now. And Deku would then proceed to basically just look around for robots. As like basically there was about 2 minutes left in terms of the exam, Deku would still be at 0 points, and he would basically just be looking around looking for anything that he could find, until finally a robot would come in front of him, and it would actually be a 3-pointer, as Deku would use his abilities to levitate it and crush it onto the ground. As Deku would proceed to basically run around and find like 3 other robots, and all of them were 3-pointers that he was destroying. So at this point, it's 3 times 4, so 16 points. He has 16 points in terms of robot points. And this is when Deku would continue running around just trying to find any robots at all, as he would see a kid with an engine quirk, or that blue-haired boy, this being Ida, destroying robots with this amazing power. Deku would think that, those powers like that are just so flashy and incredible. He wishes maybe he was born with something like that, but he'll make the most out of his abilities, because it's better to have a quirk at all than to be born quirkless. As Deku would look around, but he would notice that there's no robots at all in his direction. As out of nowhere, the ground would begin to shake and the 0-pointer would be let loose. As everybody would run away, Deku would notice that there's a girl underneath some rubble, as he would begin to immediately run that way, saying, "Hey, get up! Come on, we gotta go, that 0-pointer's coming!" As Uraraka would say, "Help! I'm stuck!" As Deku would run towards her direction and say, "Don't worry about it, I got you." As he would pick up the rubble off of her, and right as he was about to take all of it off and they were about to go off running, the 0-pointer would step on them. Or so it seems. Deku's hand would be waved up as he would stop the 0-pointer's leg before it could crush them. Deku would begin to basically, just wave his arm, and the 0-pointer's leg would just come flinging off. As Deku would then proceed to basically look at the sludge, no, not the sludge one, but the 0-pointer, and go flick his fingers, as in an instant, the sludge villain was gone. It had gone into nothingness, and Nezu would just be shocked, as immediately he would take down Izuku's name and immediately pass that kid after seeing what he had done to the 0-pointer. After this, Deku would proceed to basically just save Uraraka, taking her to Recovery Girl, and this version of Deku would actually take down Uraraka's number. After she had offered that to him, Deku would take out his phone and he would take down her number. As Deku would just be silent the whole time, still in disbelief that he had saved somebody, and Deku would go home. The next couple of days would go by and Deku would get his acceptance letter, and this time, instead of All Might being the one who tells him anything, it'd be Principal Nezu who tells him that he would love to meet him one day before UA starts. As the day would actually come the next day, and Deku would report to Nezu's office. As Nezu would be sitting there, he'd begin to ask Deku what his powers are, seeing as he saw what Deku had done, but on the list it had actually shown quirkless, so he's actually kind of confused in terms of how Deku was able to do what he had done. Deku would look at Nezu and tell him that his powers are quirk that he thinks can't be, examined or looked at this current point in time. Maybe once technology gets better, they can finally understand his powers, but for now, there's no real way for Deku to, be able to understand his powers, seeing as, he just can't right now. And yeah, that would basically lead Deku into talking to Nezu for a little bit, and Nezu would tell Deku that nonetheless, he's impressed with his power, and he's actually going to go into UA with a scholarship. He's very impressed with Deku's potential, and he hopes that Deku will reach his, his fullest potential here, being a student at UA. As Deku would smile towards Nezu's direction, he would basically look at Nezu, and well, Nezu would look at him as he would smile, and this is when Deku would proceed to basically walk away. As, the very next day of school would come in, Deku would walk into class, as he would look around, and this is when he would notice the boy with the blue hair and Bakugo arguing. As immediately Ida would stop his jibber jabber, and he would look immediately at Deku, as he would basically just do a little bit of a bow in front of him and say, "I'm sorry. You are a far superior student to me. Your powers are incredible." As after hearing that, Bakugo would say, "Powers? What powers? That numbskull is quirkless. What are you talking about?" And Ida would look at Bakugo as he would say, "You didn't see what that kid did? He took out a whole 0-pointer in an instant." as Bakugo would look at Deku and he would immediately stand up. And right before he could even get the chance to go up to Deku, a brown-haired girl would approach him from behind. And right as that happened, simultaneously, Aizawa would get up as he would say, "If you're here to make friends, I suggest you leave now." Just doing his usual Aizawa stuff. But yeah, Aizawa would basically proceed to look at Deku and just say, "Okay, get dressed up in these and meet me outside." As everybody would go outside and they would all just basically just be getting ready for Aizawa's instructions. Now, inside of the locker room, Deku wasn't told anything, which is why I skipped it, since this version of Deku isn't built like a Greek god like most of my other Dekus. So yeah, they'd go outside, and this is when Aizawa would actually toss the ball over to Deku, since he actually got the most impressive markings. He had 16 points plus 80 rescue points, seeing as he handled the situation flawlessly. So yeah, Deku would be granted 80 rescue points plus 16, getting a total score of 96 points. And Deku would be tossed the ball as Bakugo would immediately just cross his arms as he looks attentively at Deku. Deku would proceed to basically just reel his arm back as he throws it in a really weak fashion. And Aizawa would then look at Deku as he asked him why he didn't use his powers. Deku would say that he doesn't really like using his abilities if, you know, there's no villains. He doesn't like using them for just things like this. As Aizawa would tell Deku to use his powers now, and that it's not something that he has a choice. He's ordering him. Deku would proceed to look towards Aizawa as he's tossed another ball, and in an instant, Deku would basically just like catch it, but before he can, he would just aim his pointer finger at it as he would then reel it back and toss it up into the skies. He would proceed to get a score of infinity. Bakugo would immediately, after seeing that, would proceed to basically run at Deku as he would say, "Deku, how long were you hiding this from me?" And Deku would proceed to basically just hold his hands up in front of him as he's getting ready to dodge the hit, like take the hit. Aizawa would grab Bakugo with the scarf and he would say, "One more outburst like that and I will expel you before you get the chance to breathe." And Bakugo would basically calm himself down. As for the rest of the stuff that Deku can use his telekinetic abilities for, Deku would ace the whole thing in its whole entirety, and Deku would just destroy each and every single, you know, aspect of the thing. In terms of the grip string test, Deku would use his telekinetic abilities to just crush the thing. The race, Deku would blitz over there and just teleport, and yeah, Deku would get an incredible score in terms of, well, his points. Deku would actually get first place with the rest of the order going as it did in canon. Just, you know, Deku first, and whoever was first now is second, and you know, you guys get the point. But yeah, that's pretty much how the quirk exam basically goes in this version of events. But with that being said though, guys, I believe that this is a pretty good part to leave it off on. If you guys want to find out what happens on the next episode, make sure to go down below and hit me with a solid like, since you know, your boy gonna need a couple of likes to drop the next part. That being said, today you guys may get a double upload, maybe another Naruto series. I'm not too sure whether I am or won't record it, but that being said, if I do, make sure to go check it out. Even if you don't watch Naruto what ifs, you know, they're pretty cool. So that being said, guys, you guys know the drill. I love each and every single one of you guys. It has been your boy Zether, and I am out. Peace.